Hello, everyone. Welcome to Feedstuffs 365. I'm Sarah Muirhead. With us today is agricultural meteorologist Greg Soulje with a look at what's ahead for this growing season. Welcome, Greg. Great to have you back with us.
Well, thank you, Sarah. Always a pleasure to get together here on these longer editions where we kind of ultimately zero in on some of the monthly and seasonal outlooks and some of the aspects of how it'll certainly impact the rest of planting and certainly crop production and growth and development and even the livestock operations as well here as we wind our way through the remaining weeks of meteorological spring and get ready to move into summertime.
Exactly. And for those of you that are joining us, we thank you for taking the time to tune in. If you have any questions for Greg, feel free to post those there in the chat area on your screen or in your social media feed. Greg, planters have been rolling a lot here in Northern Illinois, and I'm even seeing some emergence both on the beans and the corn side. So it seems like they're getting at it and it's going strong.
Yes, exactly. And I tell you, there's such a range, a dichotomy of planting conditions and progress that's been made across the Corn Belt. My radio pals down in Champaign County, Vermilion County, Illinois, saying, yeah, they're up and there's some emergence both on the corn and soybean side. They're making headway, except for still in wetter pockets as you get closer to the I-70 corridor. And then you go farther east and south from there, basically from about Kokomo, Indiana to Columbus, Indiana, in just slightly east and west. That's kind of set around that Indianapolis area. Obviously, you get out into farmland there. One of those cells from those upper air lows just sat all night. Yesterday afternoon got going, sat all night, and they're sitting in 3 to 5 inches of rainfall totals there. So a range once again across the heartland. Anyway, we'll take a look at things here going forward and the headlines as we normally do when we get together on our Tuesdays. And we do these seasonal outlooks on the longer broadcast as well. If you're out building the equipment shed or a barn, you got to dig the footings, you got to pour the concrete, get the framing in and at least the structures to get things up and growing and structurally wise, the roof and on the barn and the concrete and all that. So we build it from bottom to top here on the long range aspect of things as well. And the bottom line is here is the at least the headlines as it applies to the month, I should say, the Corn Belt around here. The month has been, again, so far relatively positive, but in a range where some of the totals are 35 to 45% complete in planting over the west and northwestern Corn Belt areas of Minnesota, Nebraska, and through Iowa. And then you head back into the eastern and southeastern Corn Belt areas, also south of I-70, primarily southern Indiana, especially through Ohio, not even out of single digits with regard to planting operations. So again, summer-like warmth out west of the Mississippi. It's the eastern flank of some of that 95-degree air that made it as far north as the southern Canadian Prairie, i.e. Winnipeg, over the past weekend, near 100 of the Red River Valley of the North. Big changes going on there. So there's heat across the western Corn Belt at 85 to 95 degrees, otherwise mid-70s to mid-80s over the eastern sections. And again, these isolated, widely scattered, slow-moving showers and thunderstorms, except for 1 or 2 spots in Illinois. Everyone else is in good order except near I-64. And again, get farther east and southeast into Indiana and Ohio. Still some delays where the showers are breaking out once again in the warmth of the afternoon. So we've got drought easing rains, a spread of about 40 degrees across a cold front heading through the northern plains and parts of the Canadian Prairie right now. And so that's welcome moisture and some wind-related issues as well. There may be as much as 1 to 3 inches of rain coming through the Dakotas, the Canadian Prairie. Meanwhile, you get south of about I-80 and over the eastern half of the plains, it's still a world of hurt out there with regard to either crop conditions, winter wheat, and or soil moisture. As of the 11th, about a half of the rangelands and pasture lands were rated poor and very poor in Montana, but the rains will have helped there. Nebraska, there'll be some degree of rain getting going in South Dakota, so those should be in the next couple of weeks some improvement there. But farther south, it's an afternoon of 100 to 105-degree heat down to the Rio Grande, upper 80s to mid-90s over the rest of the central and southern plains. So rapid development of winter wheat, but again, still struggling on dryness and drought. We'll take a look at that drought monitor in just a bit. The heat, by the way, is the story in through southern Texas, and there's signs of that hot ridge building northward, sliding to the east. It'll be bumping up with this advancing cold air. We're going to strengthen the jet, and there's some of the reasoning in the short to medium range why we're getting a little concerned while we're in great shape that the degree of rainfall, the rate of rainfall back into the Corn Belt areas here as we take a look at it down the line. may get a little out of control. In the meantime, record-setting heat down across parts of the Rio Grande and San Antonio at 109 to 103 degree heat, respectively. Again, there'll be a build to that I-10 and I-20 corridor, the heart of the Cotton Belt, into the southeastern states. And there's a fair amount of livestock operations in through Florida as well. Dryness and drought there, and those folks will be heating up in the days to come. And windy weather conditions expected and building in through eastern New Mexico, West Texas as well. And that's going to be a problem area because of dryness, drought, the wind, and of course that means increased fire potential in that particular part of the country. There is the outlook for the fire risk for the rest of the workday today. Centered there, we've seen a general net improvement with the recent rains across a good part of the northern and central plains and into some of those Corn Belt locales as well. There is the look at weather here for the rest of the workday, and you can still see kind of a diffuse to scattered area of rain over the northern and eastern Corn Belt. There's still the same upper air low that was down into the southeastern states last weekend. It migrated up to about the southern Appalachians and continue to track north and west. And yes, pardon me, another example that you can get the weather to back up, move from east to west. And that's exactly what happened. You put some daytime heating under that, temperatures up aloft a little bit colder, and you come up with these isolated to widely scattered, but downpour producing, slow moving producing showers and thunderstorms across parts of the eastern Corn Belt. Pest coverages into Michigan, Indiana again, and again through Ohio. So some of those rains won't be any great impact to field work or planting operations what's left, but except for some of the wetter areas, again, of southern and southeast Indiana and across Ohio. Rest of the western Corn Belt, great shape. You can see that strong cold front over the western half of the Dakotas, Nebraska Panhandle. There's snow above 7,000 feet, kind of low for the low elevation for the time of year to have some snow coming on down for mid-May, but the moisture through Montana and Wyoming is certainly of great benefit. The weather continues to be a little more busy into the northern plains. A couple of stronger storms getting going across the Dakotas. The scattered showers continue in through tonight through as far west as Wisconsin and Illinois, but maybe 10 or 20% coverage there, best across the rest of the far eastern Corn Belt areas. And the showers and thunderstorms in a couple of areas across the Dakotas will turn heavy and severe. We'll take a look at that severe weather aspect in just a minute. By tomorrow morning, some pretty good coverage rains through the Dakotas, the Red River Valley of the North, a sizable drop of temperatures, livestock managers, bin and barn operators. Wouldn't be surprised that north of the border, there is probably the likelihood of some snow in the forecast in places like Edmonton and Alberta and as you get over towards Winnipeg as well. Serious about that. That's the degree of cold air coming back into the northern part of the hemisphere. But in the meantime, welcome rains, an inch or two or more in those northern plains areas. You can see a cold front lined up over the western Corn Belt areas. It will press eastward. The air is a little dry here. Most of the dynamics to make most of the organized moisture, rain, if you will, is across the upper Midwest, the Dakotas. You can see that darker shades of green. And a couple of showers and thunderstorms, though, will be turning a little on the gustier, strong side over parts of the Great Lakes region by tomorrow afternoon. And again, hit and miss potential for some rainfall over the eastern Corn Belt areas. So probably time for some rain coming off the warmth and the heat over those western areas. Just minimal delays off to the east, except in still some of those wetter areas and points on northward in through Michigan, for example. And then there is the Friday weather maps and charts. Yet a secondary cold front is coming on through. Now, temperatures up aloft behind that first front as it makes it through the Ohio Valley with rains in the northeast New England. They're not really significantly cooler. They're actually warming still. So readings that may top the 90-degree mark as far north as maybe Rockford, Chicago, Milwaukee, away from the lake. And points west from there, even some low 90s over the mid-Mississippi Valley, probably stay just as warm for the day on Friday. So if your soil moisture is in good shape and you've got emergence underway, boy, there'd be a nice little growth spurt going on. And some wind, too, to firm and dry things up where you do need that. But at the same time, the western Corn Belt back into cooler weather. So a little bit of a reversal here, but everything basically what everybody needs, with the exception of those wetter east and far southeastern sections of the Corn Belt, i.e. Ohio and southeastern Indiana. Severe weather this afternoon, slight risk. That's the level 2 out of 5 across the Dakotas. Severe weather Thursday does get ramped up into an enhanced potential, probably sometime late Wednesday night tonight into Thursday morning, and then redevelopment in the afternoon through Wisconsin, Michigan, northern Indiana. So that's 3 out of 5 on the scale. Slight risk will go all the way down to the Ohio Valley. And the slight risk potential is at the I-70 corridor on south and east come Friday. So some of those wetter areas, again, like they get more rain. So the range of planting conditions, field work opportunities, growth, emergence, good stands, what have you, will continue to be probably ahead of the 5-year averages over the western and northwestern Corn Belt. Still behind that is east and southeastern sections. No organized rains for the cattle country, central and southern plains. Organized rains, wet pastures, but pasture rejuvenation, pasture growth, whatever you want to look at it. Alfalfa as well. The rain certainly will appreciate those northern areas in the next 48 hours or so. There's the drought monitor back from March 11th. And kind of an ugly looking picture across much of the Corn Belt, particularly the Plain States areas, southwestern part of the country and through Southern California. Southeastern part of the country as well in a world of hurt. Now, this is the drought monitor from late last week and showing still, moderate drought conditions in the Carolinas, mid-Atlantic region. I think it'll be a market improvement by probably a category or two in those southeastern parts of the country on tomorrow, next Thursday's drought monitor. And rapid worsening in through Florida. Boy, if they get a couple of thunderstorms going in the rainy season before they can resolve that drought issue, and you get the lightning strikes, maybe some fire issues once again. I think we had that in the late winter, early spring down in central and south Florida as well. No change, nor is anything expected. It'll take a hurricane to make its way out of the Gulf and up the Rio Grande to improve moisture potential there. Same with the southwestern states, or a robust monsoon season, which I think is in the cards for that part of the country. When you get a strong monsoon season, a wet, rainy season in the Southwest, that usually means that hot ridge that impacts soil moisture, crop growth, development, livestock operations is poised somewhere in the middle part of the country. But in the meantime, still some pockets of some pretty tough drought conditions over the northern and central plains. Market improvement, northern and eastern Corn Belt, southern sections too. Just a couple little dry areas still lingering in northern and central Illinois, i.e. folks out there doing what they ought to be doing here on a very nice May afternoon across northern and central Illinois. Here is the upper configuration over the next 5 days. And by Saturday to Sunday, you can see one system through the northern Great Lakes region lifting out, minoring out, as we call it in the upper air and weather forecasting jargon. You can see another sizable trough. This is another signature example trip off that El Nino is rapidly into play, rapidly developing here, rapidly strengthening. So unusual to see systems this far south and west of this scale at this point in mid to late May. We'll see that coming across the west and southwest back into the plains, and that southwest movement of those green lines from southwest to northeast. There's a little fanning out as well. Two things: jet streams or jet streaks are embedded in there, and what we call a difluent or divergent upper air pattern. So the air is lifted, and if you bring air in, you got to move it out. It's mass equations and physics and all that other stuff. But in any event, you got to move the air up at the top someplace, and that's what you do in the upper levels of the atmosphere. So it's just like a sucking motion of the atmosphere. You're generating upward momentum and rain and thunderstorms and severe. So that's why we're getting a little, let's keep an eye on things here, both from a severe weather standpoint. The plains probably Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Corn Belt areas Tuesday, Wednesday, gone by Thursday. And there are a couple of additional features that we want to put another trough, if you will, in the middle part of the country, that U-shaped configuration. East of the trough line, it's stormy. West of the trough line, that's where fair weather resumes. So by Saturday, you can see a front strung out with markedly cooler air on the move across much of the heartland. There will be probably some frost across North Dakota, the northern half of Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, kind of in that rock growing part of the area. I don't think it'll be anything impacting crops at all. But quickly between Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, again, almost a repeat fashion of what you see on Saturday. Another front drops on in, disturbances ripple along it. Cool air is poised to the north. Summer heat, remember we talked about that 100-degree heat in Texas. That's going to build north to what we call the I-10, I-20 corridor. That's the heart of the Cotton Belt, and sit there. So you've got your hot air source, you've got your moisture source, you've got also cool air to the north, and you've got these converging low-level wind fields with fronts running along them, and just all the right ingredients are there to make rain at this point in the springtime season. So there's the next 48 hours. And for the drought areas of the northern plains, cattle country, pasture land, spring grain areas, everything else, including some winter wheat through Montana, that is a welcome sight with probably 1 to 3 inches of rain for openers into the Dakotas. And we'll get a smattering of some quarter to half, maybe some local 3/4 inch amounts favoring the far northern and far eastern corn belt. So should not be any great impact if you're trying to get back out there with planting. Probably will impact further operations over eastern and southern Indiana, Ohio, maybe southeast Michigan. The next 7 days, this is why, it's getting a little more complex now. Complex from the standpoint of trying to get breaks in these recurring rains. Some of those totals will push 4 and 5 inches, central, at least southern Corn Belt areas, 1 to 2, 1 to 3 central Corn Belt areas, and probably another total, at least this is a total here, over the next 7 days will just double what we've seen in the northern plains of the Dakotas, probably 3 to 6 there. So pretty substantial rain, snow in the mountains. That's going to help because we've already tapped into some of that snowpack across the southern sections of the Rockies and the Cascades as well because of recent heat. So the runoff has started on up, and it's nice that we can get some moisture in those western states. Upper air pattern then that takes us here over the next 10 days or so. There's that trough in the middle part of the country. Things are kind of smoothed over when you take a look at these models, if you will, and this is just for discussion purposes here. So, and you get into this time of year, the thunderstorms, the rain areas, if you will, they tend to become little atmospheric engines. They kind of ride and drive the steering currents by their own mindset. But in any event, we do have unsettled weather for about the eastern half of the country, roughly east of the Missouri. Some semblance. Beginning, you can see some of those red hatched areas and how the air kind of rides up and then sinks down across the central Pacific into Southern California. And there's a circle out there in the Pacific. That's one of those warm, hot ridge areas that this time of the year we keep an eye on, particularly if we're going to be thinking about an El Nino driven weather pattern, as in heat and expanding dryness as the summer wears on. So there's a little signature of that, and teleconnection, or putting the two together, that last line along the Gulf Coast, that is probably 95-degree air at the surface. So the hot sources are there. They're a little stronger than usual, and add into the factor again that we're moving quickly, or if not into one already, of a El Nino setup. No endorsement, but really for discussion purposes, it kind of lines up pretty nicely to thinking. This is why we think we still have some significant rain-related issues when you get these temperatures that are so compacted from probably some recurrent frosts, maybe a brief light freeze, would you believe, into the Dakotas, parts of the northwestern Corn Belt, versus readings probably 85 to 90, I-64 corridor, and southward, you've got readings in the mid-90s along the Gulf Coast area. What's the range there? 60, 70, 80 degrees. So the winds will strengthen at the surface. They'll grow stronger up aloft, and that'll help to drive this particular weather pattern. A little overdone, but the right idea that it's a weather setup through at least the third week of the month of May. Take it out for the next couple of weeks, and a little rambunctious as a quick movement east of that trough that's over the eastern part of the country. But the right idea that beginning to see some of these warmer heights, ridges, if you will, begin to come into the southwest states, and they'll begin to build northward with time. So not quite in total agreement with this by any means, but this is probably a little overdone as well. But again, the cold air source is there through the Great Lakes region, a little bit overdone, and southward extension, the warmth retrograding back into the western states, and a little too optimistic, but the general right idea, with still some wet weather concerns for the eastern and southern Corn Belt. Would like to see that as well. At least this is just the graphical interpretation from the models from the National Weather Service. Would like to see something a little more robust in the rainfall department back west of the Mississippi as well. But the general right idea of a start of a drying trend along and west of the Continental Divide as we really draw closer to the end of the month of May. So that said, Sarah, that is how we've kind of built the foundation here on what's going to move forward. on our take on the longer range weather maps and charts, of which we update every week on this
Mhm.
business, that 4-week forecast. And I think going forward, you and I get together on these Tuesdays and Fridays. I think we're going to get to a kind of a critical mass first because of, and this is what we talked about with some folks over at Farm Progress yesterday, that I think we've got the idea, some wet areas, and then we move into the dryness and drought pattern. But there's a middle part of the equation. It's like A plus what's this here equals C. The B part of this is going to be, I think, too much rain and the need for maybe in some areas the eastern and southern corn belt for replanting. So that's the thinking around here. I don't hear much else talk about it. It's the D word and where we're at right now, but no middle part of the sandwich. So here we go on our perspective here, and this will take us through the rest of May in what we think is already a weak El Nino. So we've got these cool air lobes kind of migrating, spinning through Hudson Bay, James Bay, and wouldn't be surprised that we get a lot of range of temperatures. You'll get some gain on the 4-inch soil readings, which are basically averaging out 60 to 65, thanks to the Illinois State Water Survey. They post that if you want to follow that for folks here in Illinois and the Midwest. They do post those forward soil temperatures every day in Facebook. And a couple of days ago, they had growing degree day units, which I think, if I remembered right, are running from about 300 so far up in northern Illinois to about 500 or 600 in what has emerged, obviously, into southern sections of Illinois. Probably just assume it's parts of the southern Great Lakes to the Ohio Valley. So that is a pretty decent number of growing degree day units and some warmth of the soils, but they're going to be showing some variation here with the jet stream nearby, little shots of cool air. Heat will come in for a day or two, but anytime you warm it up, we're going to make rain. Anytime you cool it off, you make rain. And it's just the whole El Nino upper air configuration continues to be pretty robust around here like this. So we're a little more bullish on rainfall versus what we may have seen here earlier on in that 4-week, at least the forecast from the National Weather Service. And still, the likelihood of some late season snow, at least in the air, for parts of the Canadian border country up towards Hudson Bay, James Bay. Nothing of significance from, I think, from a crop and livestock standpoint, other than muddy grounds, but it just testimony that the air is cold and capable when skies clear, winds drop back to have a frost or freeze and snow across the Cascades. Meanwhile, we're still looking at the likelihood of at least a little more recharge, and this will be the last of it. Again, once you get past May, the climate in the central and southern plains is more or less like if you've been to Greece or the Mediterranean area, tough to make organized rains. It's basically warm to hot and dry till further notice. So there's more rain from our perspective for the rest, obviously, of the month of May around here, and severe weather potential as well. So getting into summertime, we'll take it now from a meteorological standpoint. It's kind of a bookkeeping thing. We start the seasons. December 1st is winter. March 1st is spring, summertime, June 1, and the autumn season it's September 1. So it's just sort of a bookkeeping thing to kind of keep the calendar dates even. Some folks, and sometimes on the TV show, we'll take a look at it for those dates involving the astronomical end of it. But for our purposes here, this is the way we see early to mid-June, and things are beginning to wind down and slow down, we think, as we get deeper into the month of June. It's like mid-June, the mid-15th of June is just continues to come up as a break point on all this stuff, on our longer range stuff. So temperatures are normal. The heat's across the west. It's nothing out of control. You get these little cool air shots once in a while, but the cool air is basically moving out, winding down as it applies to the northern half of the country. And the temperatures, again, are about normal across much of the Corn Belt. We still have these systems, but they're taking on a different direction. I think we talked about this when we got together back in April, that everything's been coming up from the south and southwest, but you get storms sometimes, what we call ridge riding storms. They come across the top of the ridge, which is over the plains of the west. They follow a jet stream east and south. So it's all or nothing. You may get up one morning, see storms back to the west, and by 10 or 11 o'clock, boom, they're gone, and they reform off east and south later in the day. And at the same time, if you can get these storms to ride the jet stream pattern, they turn heavy and severe. They take on the D word, the derecho. We had a couple of those last year. I don't remember the year that we had the run that came through Iowa, just knocked everything flat, started there, and ended 18 hours later in the nation's capital. So that's the story for June, at least through mid-June around here. We still have adequate opportunities for rain where we need it, but we think that we're going to get to a point where some of these storms and rains that will recur and repeat might be enough acreage to impact markets. I don't really follow that, but maybe a small percentage of some thinking is going to go into the process that we're going to have to replant in some areas of the eastern Corn Belt as we get deeper into the month of June. The rest of June, we see those two areas of ridging, one to the Gulf Coast, one through the Rio Grande. We saw those heights, if you will, beginning to work northward, and we had that bubble, that circulation, that high in the southeastern Pacific. Well, here comes the hot ridge over the middle part of the country, at least from the Mississippi and Missouri on westward. And this El Nino continues to develop at a more steadfast pace. We're in this weak and warbling one. It now takes on a full identity scenario here as we head through the second half of the month of June. And with that, we return to exploring and expanding dryness and drought. There will have been improvements over parts of the Dakotas, parts of the plains, central and south. Don't think so. Forget about it in the southwest. Forget about it in the Southern California reaches as an improvement. And except for the Pacific Northwest, it's these ridge riding, ring of fire, break out your Johnny Cash, if you will, storm clusters that'll arrive from the Canadian prairie southeastward into the middle part of the country. For your troubles of hail and high wind, you'll get a 1.5 inch out of these things when they come through. And so that's the thinking that from the Missouri on westward, we will quickly begin to move over the middle and late parts of the month of June into a drier scenario. The middle and western and southwestern parts of the country are in that hot ridge. And there's really no change when we looked over things here a couple of days ago and updating this, that once we get locked into this, especially in El Nino years, while they tend to take on a little more diffuse look at nature as we move through the summertime season, this one looks to be a fairly moderate one around here. And while the steering currents do weaken, they weaken even further. And once you get into that hot ridge, outside of a little bubble up thunderstorm, if you can break the atmospheric cap, there's just not much going on. So this is low to mid 90 in number of days and many days that are in that upper 80-degree range. So temperatures, they may vary some. Humidity may come down. We may get a weak front or some rain cooled air, but as a whole, it is the middle part of the country to the central divide and parts of the western Corn Belt that are going to be dealing with not only a hot July, but a hot August around here. There was just nothing of significance, even from a tropical standpoint, to get to knock down the ridge. This is a pretty favorable setup, by the way, and part of this is due, in fact, that we anticipate, while it's an El Nino setup, at least an early busy tropical season that will run out of the eastern Gulf or up the Atlantic. The climatological favorite spots for tropical storms in the early tropical season, June and July, are in the Gulf Coast. Temperatures are warmer, water temperatures are warmer, and the waters are far more shallow, as well as off of Florida. So we think there'll be a couple of systems out in the western and southwestern Atlantic. Precipitation-wise, well, for some, this is good news. We move into a drier pattern to start, where it has turned too wet. So we've talked about this last month, and during our updates during the week. There's going to be a narrow corridor. Somebody's going to be perfect. Somebody east is going to be too wet. They'll call it a year, or they'll just limp along with field conditions. Others in the western Corn Belt, generally good, but then a rapiding worsening of crop conditions and pasture lands in those western Corn Belt, Great Plains areas too. The only real deviation from this, again, those storms that come through the upper Midwest and into the Northeast of New England will have a derecho look at times to them. We'll get some rainfall, but totals for the month of July to August will basically be below average. So narrow slot that's going to be in good shape. And over the Southwest, we talked about that. That's a reflection of the hot ridge. We're able to pump moisture from the Gulf, more so off the Pacific, get daytime readings. Once you crack 60 of the dew points and you have a 95 to 100-degree day in Arizona, you can make the showers and thunderstorms. They tend to be dry-based, lightning-based, fire potential. In any event, a little above average in a moderate drought condition, moderate to El Nino weather condition over the southwestern reaches of the country. So, Sarah, that's the story. That's all I got for you.
Very good. I mean, you're talking drought. We've been talking drought actually since we've earlier this year.
Early
on. This is no surprise to anybody. But are you thinking moderate drought, extreme drought? Are you able to gauge that at this point?
Well, where we, especially in the Great Plains, where, basically I-80 on southward, and let's say from the Missouri on westward, I don't see a lot going on in the moisture department on any regular basis. So that's going to probably return to a moderate to severe, if not severe to maybe abnormally strong, exceptional drought, if you will, the category 5 on the drought monitor. And we'll teleconnect that with the Southwest and sections of the Intermountain West. Now, there may be some local improvement because of thunderstorms and monsoon moisture there, but so it's all or nothing. Either flood out I-5 or you start up forest fires because of lightning out there. But I think it's probably a 3 or 4 and maybe edging up to a 5 on the drought monitor, exceptional into some of those Plain States areas by the time we get to late August and September there. Probably returning to what we saw on that March drought monitor in the central Corn Belt areas and maybe up northwest into parts of Iowa and Minnesota, and probably abnormally dry to moderate drought eastern sections. But again, some of those crops not only have to do a replant probably in some acreage east and south, but again, I don't have a great feel of how seed development is this era, where the seed and the root bed sits in water and then the water goes away and you're digging down to subsoil moisture. If it's too much, you're drowned out. If it's not enough, you've got crop wilt and lack of development and lack of ear development and all that kind of stuff. So another example, every year, been doing this for a million years, of a range of crop conditions this year. And the fact that we're not out of the woods here and we're very much on board with the moderate and probably severe drought that'll get going from the plains of the Western Corn Belt. That was the discussion point. Here we are here, but you forgot the rain part of the forecast, and then we move into the drought situation. So there's still more rain coming, maybe too much of a good thing, and definitely the drought is on the way from the plains into the Corn Belt locales as we get through the mid to late months of summertime.
Yeah, so watch that replanting, watch that flooding, and then of course watch that drought. All
Watch
kinds
the
of
heat,
stuff.
livestock operations as well.
Let's throw in the wildfires too, right?
Make sure those water lines.
There's always an issue as well.
Yeah, make sure those water lines for the livestock operations and hay and all that are stacked up at maybe another season in the central and southern plains and southwest where you're looking for supplies from other locations.
Yeah,
so
exactly. So, we'll touch base with Greg. We touch base, as he's mentioned, every Tuesday and Friday on Feedstuffs 365. So you'll want to tune in for our kind of mid and early week updates. And then, of course, every month we get this longer term forecast. And I'm sure next month we'll be looking into fall and going a little farther out with that even. So we'll have
a little more detailed outlook on the tropical weather season as well, which typically in a moderate El Nino tends to quickly wind down after a busy start. So it may be a somewhat lesser than usual tropical season in the Atlantic. So we'll take a look at that, maybe a peek in the fall season, and move onwards and upwards from there.
Very good. Well, thank you so much, Greg. Thank you for your time and your insight today.
Thank you. And we'll see you everybody on This Week in Agribusiness as well.
And thank you all for tuning in. We appreciate you taking the time to join us. You can watch past episodes of Feedstuffs 365 on feedstuffs.com. Until next time, for Feedstuffs, I'm Sarah Muirhead.